This is so emotional. I'm on a journey to create the greatest movie experience in the world. While I'm carving out my filmmaking entrepreneurial path, I want to help you create yours. Let's make some movies. Hello everyone, James Martin here. I'm back with my very first Filmmaker Reacts video. If you saw my video from last week, I tried experimenting with this new format where I actually responded to other Filmmaker React videos. I'm not here to rip off other filmmakers. I firmly support other artists. It's one of the values I believe in. That video was actually more just to add value to someone else's video. So this video is one of my very own. I'm actually reacting to very specific movie scenes. These are actually 3 great movie scenes from just 3 phenomenal movies. Highly recommend you go check them out. And I'm just going to break down sort of the different components of these individual scenes. Alright, so now we're going to look at Yoda teaching Luke the Force in Star Wars Empire Strikes Back.
No. We'll never get it out now.
So certain are you?
Alright, so just a few writing notes. So off the cuff, so obviously Luke failed. Why did Luke fail? It's his ability to believe in the Force and to believe in himself. So this is the primary challenge of the scene. And I mean, the scene starts with a simple sort of Force practice, and then Yoda makes a point that he needs to believe in the Force. Luke rejects him, and then a moment later, Yoda uses his ability with the Force to lift the ship out of the swamp onto land. Luke says,
I don't believe it.
And then Yoda replies,
That is why you fail.
This is a beautiful bookmark. Again, the idea of this, the purpose of this scene is that Luke doesn't believe in the Force. He doesn't believe in whatever this thing is. He doesn't believe in himself, right? He's got insecurities and he's got arrogance. And so the whole point of the scene is just to showcase to him, look, the Force is not a joke. This is the seriousness of the scene. The scene has a purpose, which is that Luke needs to understand that the Force actually works and how it actually works. I absolutely love the theme music. It's using the typical Luke Skywalker theme and sort of using this as a way to enhance the power, enhance, the message of the Force and to intertwine Luke with the Force, because eventually Luke's got to learn how to become a Jedi. Again, I also love the fact that this music is a very good use of describing the Force. Good music should give you some form of information. It's not direct information, it's more what you feel from this music. From this music, I'm already getting a sense of a wonder, which fits perfectly into the Star Wars universe.
For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
What's also important here is characters' decision making. Luke's not an idiot because he failed. He failed because he gave up, right? Luke chose not to listen to Yoda and remarks at him saying,
You want the impossible.
This shows Luke's arrogance to learn. And then Yoda also chooses to make his point by lifting the ship out of the lake. This shows A, that Yoda is strong with the Force. B, that he's also, a very wise teacher. And he's also a nice person. He helped him get the ship out of the swamp. And this is also a great lesson in making a very strong case in point towards Luke. Now, I also know a lot of people have commented over the years, it's the fact that Yoda is a beautiful puppet and especially looks beautiful when he's not CGI or computer-generated images. Yoda looks much better as a puppet rather than just some CGI animation, CGI meaning computer-generated images. Now, what you're probably not going to believe is, because I've watched a lot of behind the scenes of Star Wars, this swamp is actually sort of a raised level, right? So everything above that is a fake set. And they do that because the puppeteer, I can't remember his name, he goes underneath the layer, and then there's about a hole where Yoda would stand, and then he could just put his hand or his face or whatever he needs to use up through that first layer to sort of mimic the puppet, right? That's why Yoda doesn't move. And if he does move, you don't look at the legs. It's really creating that mesmerizing movie magic effect. But I mean, even in a wide shot, it doesn't give it away. It's a small hole, hand comes up into the Yoda puppet. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the puppeteer work is just brilliant. And I mean, it doesn't even look silly. It's not like something from Sesame Street, right? You know, if you're sucked into the performance, it doesn't feel silly, which means it did its job. And I mean, it doesn't feel silly. At least not to me, it doesn't feel silly. Next, we're looking at the You Shall Not Pass scene from The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Alright, so wicked miniature. Believe it or not, this entire set piece is an actual miniature. When you have the cast, when you have the Fellowship running down that bridge, that's actually a computer-generated Fellowship cast running down a miniature set. This is great miniature and CGI work at its best, and the reason why is you can't tell one apart from the other. Right? The CGI looks so realistic. And I mean, these characters are tiny. They don't have to animate faces, right? And they could be on screen for several seconds and you wouldn't even know the difference, right? And then you look at this more detailed bridge and you're confused because it's like, what? We have realistic people, and I thought we were people, and we actually have a realistic miniature and it's huge. How do we do this? Again, what we need to do is make sure that the effects disappear so that it's an imagination left up to the audience. You know, and this is one of the big reasons why Lord of the Rings is so beloved all around the world, and to this day. It's actually almost 20 years old, believe it or not. Now, we have to talk about Howard Shore's brilliant score. I mean, the guy was born to make the music for Lord of the Rings. It is just brilliant. It gets you the theme of Moria, this deep, resonating male choir voice, you know, to represent the minds and the male side of the dwarves. Oh, it's just so rich. You know, and especially I love the highlights that it gives to the Balrog to make it seem very threatening, and then it gives a little bit of power to Gandalf when he sort of wins a little bit at the end. Now, very subtle subtext, and subtext is important, particularly when you tell your story. The thing you have to understand is this was not so much a surprise for Gandalf, right? For Gandalf's character, he knew he was going to die. He knew he was going to die. From the moment they made the decision to go into the mines of Moria, he knew this was it. And so everything leading up to this point was absolutely deliberate. Gandalf could have just run out of the mines along with the Fellowship. He could have very much well have done that. No problem whatsoever. I mean, the Balrog was not crossing that bridge whatsoever. But he chose to stay, defeat the Balrog. He knew he was going to die, and he needed to in order to move the plot. Now, my one and only critique for this scene, and I know Ian McKellen, who played Gandalf, had a bit of an issue with this, and that is old people can't hold on to the edge of a ledge by their fingers, especially someone of that age. It's not practical whatsoever. You know, I understand they want to just sort of drag out that moment, that sense of, oh, is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? And then, boom, he falls. What I probably would have done is done something else where maybe he was more on the ledge, like maybe like from his hip up was on the ledge and then he slipped, or maybe he was sort of like he was lying down, you know, completely on the bridge and then maybe a piece broke off that led him to fall, but no one can hold by their fingernails. And that's just a very small, you know, criticism. And I mean, that's just a very small, picky critique, you know. Mind you, they create like a huge fantasy world, so I'm not complaining. It's just nitpicking, that's it. Now, obviously, a stunt double made the fall. You know, they didn't ask Ian McKellen to actually fall flat on his face, you know, and to slip off an edge. You know, chances are this was probably they created this set at full scale on a blue screen set or a green screen set, had a stunt double dressed up in, you know, the costume and the wig and whatnot. So when he fell, they created that effect. And then when he did slip off, he probably just fell onto a mat. And then they imposed that into the final scene. And because you're not looking at the face, you just automatically assume it's Ian McKellen. Now here's a very interesting visual effects shot. So when Boromir is holding Frodo, what you have to understand is obviously Elijah Wood is a very tall person. Like, Sean and Elijah are pretty much the same height almost. So how do they make Frodo look really, really small? Well, what they did was Sean Bean, who's the actor who played Boromir, was actually holding up what's called a scale double of Frodo. What these were essentially small people, and they had one specifically for Frodo, dressed up in a costume and the makeup and a very creepy mask that essentially assembled Elijah Wood. And then Sean Bean would hold the scale double, do his acting, do his performance, and then run out carrying the scale. Then later on, they had Elijah Wood dressed up in the makeup and the hair with a blue sort of leotard in front of a blue screen, so that they just captured, this performance, and then digitally imposed that onto the scale double, onto the little person that Sean Bean is holding. And that's how you create the effect. Right, and it's only on screen just for a few seconds. You're so distracted by the emotional moment that just happened, so you're not paying attention to like, oh, is that fake? Is that real? And it's also very, very small. If the camera was up closer, it would probably look a little more fake. Now, to me, this is really, really good writing, because a scene is either establishing information or doing something to move the plot forward. This is establishing emotional information. And what I mean by that is, so we just experienced a major death, right? A major character just died in the plot. And there's about 8 different characters, and we're experiencing what this death, what this loss means to the different characters. What are their perspectives? You know what I mean? With Samwise Gamgee, his heart is broken. Pippin has some regret in his face. Legolas is confused because elves don't experience death in their culture. Aragorn, who's sort of used to it, can stay focused on the mission and can focus on everyone's safety to push forward. And then Frodo has a major change in his character as mindlessly moves forward, but is shattered at losing one of his closest friends. Alright, last but not least, we are looking at the shower scene from The Rock.
Anderson here, General Hummel.
Commander Anderson, if you have any concern for the lives of your men...
This is not happening.
Oh, this is so emotional. Alright, so obviously those aren't real guns. Those are either prop guns and they're just sort of flailing it around, or they're carrying blanks. So what blanks do is it gives off the effect and makes a noise that you can actually react to. Boom, boom, boom when you pull the trigger, but it actually doesn't fire any ammunition. This is a part of the special effects, and then the special effects, what they do is they come in with these little sort of pockets of air that blow off dust. So if you're pointing at a particular target and you fire off a blank shot, the special effects will have this timed off sort of blast happening on a particular target, so that it looked like you fired and it hit the wall or it hit something. And then when you had bullets hitting a particular actor or stunt double or whoever, they have these little packs underneath the costume that would just spit out blood. So anytime you have the guns, they're firing at the actors and there's blood spilling out, obviously that's not real. There's a little blood pack that's just gushing out, and this happens all the time with sword fights, knife fights, punches to the face, kicks to the face, various objects, and guns. Now, as much as I have some issues with Michael Bay's films in general, Michael Bay being the director of The Rock, what I so love about his camera work is the intensity of it. He moves in fast. He's focused, and he does a lot of movement. It intensifies the scene. I mean, you look at several of our characters, the camera is constantly moving in. Every time we see them, it's constantly moving in. It creates that intensity, and we don't care. We're focusing on the emotions and the scene itself. We don't care, but it just, I love it so much. And again, this is good writing because the stakes are high. This is not just like random people that we never got to be introduced to. We got to be introduced to several of these characters, not all of them, but several of them, right? And so when they die, it becomes an emotional loss for us, and yet they're not the protagonist. we think that they're going to be the solution to the problem, but then we get rid of them, which adds even more pressure to Sean Connery's character and Nicolas Cage's character later on. Oh my gosh, I love Ed Harris. Like, there's probably 2 actors in the world that I would consider as scary good when it comes to acting. One of them being Ed Harris, the other one being Eva Green, scary good. And just, I mean, I would hate to have Ed Harris as my drill sergeant. I mean, just his acting, just dead focused and just can be really, really intimidating, which is perfect for this character. Oh, I love it so much. And of course, I have to give a shout out to one of my favorite film composers of all time, perhaps a lot of other people as well, and that is Hans Zimmer. Just brilliant, brilliant scores, bringing up that theme of The Rock, this tragedy of loss. What are you going to give up? And it's brought back into this scene. It's a little more sadder because we're losing, these special ops people. All right, and there you have it. This is James Martin as a filmmaker reacting to 3 best movie scenes in the history of mankind. If you have any recommendations of other movies or scenes or anything that you would like me to look at and react to, please leave it down in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas, and I'll join in the discussion as well. And give this a massive thumbs up. Let me know that you want to see more of these filmmaker react videos, because I'll definitely make more in the future if you're all interested in doing it. But if you got value out of this video, please give it a massive thumbs up, share it to other people so that they benefit as well. And also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload, because I post weekly tips, tactics, production vlogs, all sorts of great videos to help you filmmakers to grow as a filmmaker, make better movies, and to let everyone else enjoy the process of movie making. And that's it. Best of luck. I hope you enjoyed these scenes as well, and I will see you next time.